The elevator was made of glass. At 11:47 p.m., Chicago spread 47 floors below, and Zara stood alone in that glass box, holding a sealed envelope with a federal court stamp and her name typed in a font that felt like a verdict. She looked at her reflection in the door, calm eyes, a face that had spent 26 years learning not to give anything away. She didn't recognize the woman looking back. 6 months ago, she hadn't known this building existed. She had been nobody, invisible by design, discarded by choice of people who were supposed to love her. Now her name was on the directory of the most powerful tower in Chicago. The question she still couldn't answer was whether that was a rescue, or just a different kind of cage. Don't go anywhere, because what happened between that basement room and this glass elevator is a story you are not going to believe. Hit subscribe right now and turn on notifications so you don't miss a single second of this. Drop a comment and tell me where you're watching from and what time it is there. I want to know who's staying up for this one. Now, let me tell you how it all began. Monroe Estate, Lincoln Park, 7:14 in the morning. Zara was in the kitchen before anyone else was awake, which was the point. White marble countertops, a 6-burner range, a chandelier even in here. The kind of house that appeared in charity gala programs under the heading hosted by. Her room was in the basement, converted storage. A window 7 inches above street level. She could see shoes passing on the sidewalk but never faces. She had measured the room once out of curiosity she immediately regretted. 214 square feet. She had stopped measuring things after that. Girl, Diane Monroe's voice from the top of the stairs. Not a shout, a frequency, the specific pitch that 18 years had trained into Zara's nervous system to mean move. She plated the eggs, poured the coffee, black 2 sugars, 162 degrees, and carried both upstairs without being asked twice. Marcus Monroe arrived at 8:31 a.m. already in his suit, 58, gray at the temples, the kind of man whose smile arrived before his eyes did, and whose eyes never completed the journey. Celeste followed, 28, honey-haired, settling onto the arm of the couch like she was expecting a show. There's been a complication with the Kwan engagement, Marcus said. He laid it out clean. 9 days ago, I-90 eastbound, 10:23 p.m. A truck, driver's side impact. Ji-hoon Kwan, CEO of Kwan Capital, $6.2 billion in assets, Celeste's fiancé, was now paralyzed from the waist down. Permanent, the doctors said, and the wedding contract was still legally binding. Withdraw, and the family lost a merger worth $340 million over 6 years. Celeste studied her fingernails. Zara understood before he finished the sentence. She felt it the way you feel a car slow on a street you're crossing. The shift in pressure, the attention redirected. Her palm found the glass dining table, cold, solid. She pressed flat against it and did not let go. Nobody saw. Nobody in this room had ever looked at Zara long enough to notice the small things. You'll take Celeste's place, Marcus said. The contract specifies a Monroe daughter. It doesn't name which one. Zara looked at all 3 of them. They wore the same expression. People who had already finished this conversation in their heads and were waiting for her to arrive. She took one breath. What do I get? Marcus blinked, a caught blink. If I hold up a contract worth $340 million to this family, Zara said, what do I get out of it? Celeste laughed. Diane looked away. Marcus recalibrated, small and fast like a man adjusting his footing. He had underestimated her. He was correcting. What do you want? An apartment, 2 bedrooms, decent neighborhood, $60,000 cash after the wedding. Notarized before I sign anything. 4 seconds. Fine, Marcus said, too quickly. A man who negotiated 9-figure agreements did not concede $60,000 in 4 seconds unless the number on the other side was something she wasn't yet seeing. Zara filed that away without expression and said, then I'll do it. That night, alone in her basement room, Zara typed his name, Ji-hoon Kwan. The results came fast. Forbes profile. Tribune features, a photograph from a charity gala black suit, locks pulled back in a low knot, expression that gave away exactly nothing. The kind of face that made people nervous without being able to explain why. She read for 2 hours. CEO at 29, built Kwan Capital from a mid-size investment firm into something that made politicians return calls on Sundays. And then buried in a finance blog with 400 subscribers. A name she almost scrolled past. The chairman, no last name, no confirmation. Just a pattern of references in Chicago's business underground, the kind of circles where what you didn't say carried more weight than what you did. A name people used when they meant the man nobody touches. Zara set her phone down at 1:33 a.m. and looked at the ceiling of her basement room. This was not a broken man waiting to be cared for. This was a man waiting for something. The morning of the wedding, Nara Shin knocked on Zara's hotel room door at 7:50 a.m. Mid-30s, Korean-American, gray blazer, the organized calm of someone who managed chaos professionally. She introduced herself as Ji-hoon's assistant and gestured to the stylist standing behind her. Mr. Kwan thought you might want help getting ready. Zara looked at the stylist, then back at Nara. I'm fine. Nara's expression didn't shift. She stepped forward and set a small envelope on the table. He asked me to leave this regardless. Inside, a note card. Handwriting compact and precise, the kind that left no wasted space. Wear whatever you want. Just be on time. J.K. Zara read it twice. Then she put on the simple white dress she had chosen herself and did not touch the stylist kit. Quan Estate, Lake Forest, 2 p.m. The estate sat on the shore of Lake Michigan like it had always been there. Stone walls, ivy, tall windows that caught the gray afternoon light. Outside, photographers gathered near the gate. Celeste arrived in a white Rolls-Royce and stepped out like punctuation. Brett, Quan, Ethan, Ji-hoon's stepbrother, rushed to take her hand. Flashbulbs, laughter, the performance of people who understood how to be witnessed. Zara walked in through a side entrance alone. At the front of the hall, Ji-hoon sat in his wheelchair. She noticed it immediately. The quality of stillness. Not the stillness of a man diminished. The stillness of a man who had decided precisely how much of himself to show. Shoulders level, hands resting loose on the armrests, locks in a low knot, and his eyes moving once across the room, finding her and not moving again. The way he watched her walk toward him was not the way a man looked at a stranger. Victoria Qui-Gon intercepted her before she reached the altar. Early 50s, cream dress, a smile that delivered warmth like a bill. "So you're the substitute. How charming." Zara smiled back. "And you must be the stepmother everyone warned me about." Victoria's smile froze. From 2 feet away, Ji-hoon exhaled. "Sort sound 9 sentences." Was 9 sentences. He looked only at his son. "Rise above it, you always do." Nobody in the room understood the full weight of it. Zara did. The drive back to Kwan Tower took 22 minutes. They sat across from each other in the black SUV, the city sliding past the windows in long amber streaks. 4 minutes of silence. Then the glasses. Zara looked at him. "They're a prop." Ji-hoon's voice was even. "You read the seating cards from 30 feet away at dinner. Those lenses are flat." She didn't deny it. She reached up and took them off. Ji-hoon looked at her. Not the assessing look of a man noticing beauty, but the settled look of a man confirming something he already knew. He nodded once, said nothing. That single nod unsettled her more than any compliment could have, because it meant he had been paying attention from the beginning, and she had no idea yet what else he had seen. The penthouse occupied the entire 47th floor. Zara stood in the entrance the first night and didn't move for a moment. Not from awe, exactly, but from the particular disorientation of a person whose frame of reference had just been replaced without warning. Floor-to-ceiling windows on 3 sides. Lake Michigan running dark and wide to the east. Ceilings high enough that sound behaved differently up here, softer, like the air itself had more room to absorb things. Her bedroom had a door that locked from the inside. She locked it that first night, then stood there with her hand still on the bolt, feeling the smallness of the gesture and not caring. The first 4 days had a shape to them. Coffee on the kitchen counter each morning before she woke. Black, no sugar, which was how she actually took it, not the 2 sugars she made for Diane Monroe. She noticed that. She didn't mention it. Ji-hoon was present in the apartment the way a carefully arranged room was present. Everything in its place, nothing demanding anything from her. Their conversations lasted an average of 3 minutes. He asked nothing personal. She volunteered nothing. The arrangement was clean and functional and entirely unlike anything Zara had experienced in 18 years of living in a house, where her presence was treated as a debt she was perpetually failing to repay. She didn't trust it. Clean and functional in her experience was what things looked like right before they asked for something. On the 4th night, she couldn't sleep. 2:19 a.m. She padded out of her room in socks, intending to find water, and stopped in the doorway of the living room. Ji-hoon was standing at the window, not sitting, not in the wheelchair that was parked near the kitchen island like a prop waiting for its next scene. Standing, both feet flat on the cold stone floor, spine straight, hands loose at his sides. He was looking down at Chicago the way a man looks at something he owns and is deciding what to do with. Zara's hand found the doorframe. The city threw light up through the glass. Amber and white, catching the dust in the air between them, making it visible, each particle suspended in its slow fall. Ji-hoon's shoulders were relaxed in a way she had not yet seen in the daytime, like the version of himself he wore in public required a particular tension, and here, at 2:19 a.m., he had finally set it down. He heard her. She watched his shoulders register the sound. A single breath, a slight shift of weight. He turned his head. They looked at each other across the dark room. 7 seconds, neither spoke. In the morning, he placed her coffee on the counter without comment. She sat across from him and wrapped both hands around the mug. "When?" she said. He looked at her. "You said you'd explain. When?" Ji-hoon set his own cup down, looked at the window, then back at her. "Not yet," he said. But soon. It was not a satisfying answer. She accepted it anyway. Not from patience, but because she had spent enough time around people who lied to recognize the specific texture of someone telling the truth about a limit. The Aldermore Grand stood on the corner of Rush and Delaware, 42 stories of pale stone and glass that had hosted every significant gathering in Chicago's moneyed world for 30 years. The Quan Capital Autumn Gala filled its ballroom on a Thursday evening. 300 people, the kind of crowd where every conversation was also a transaction. Zara wore a deep green dress Nara had selected. She had chosen to wear it. That distinction mattered to her. The dress fit well and she moved in it without thinking about it, which was the only thing she required from clothes. Ji-hoon arrived in the wheelchair. Of course he did. Victoria materialized within 12 minutes. Cream gown, diamonds, the signature smile that preceded damage. She worked the room like a surgeon and her technique with Zara was precise. Not confrontation, which could be defended against, but erasure. Every group Victoria joined, the circle closed a half step tighter. Every introduction she made omitted Zara by 2 inches and a redirected shoulder, invisible by social geometry. Zara recognized the method. She had been on the receiving end of cruder versions her entire life. Claire Ashwood arrived late, 40 blonde, the specific brand of beautiful that came from money and maintenance. She crossed to Ji-hoon with a familiarity that had history in it, her hand briefly on his arm, her laugh arriving half a second before the joke. She glanced at Zara once the way a person glances at furniture. Then a man in a sport coat approached Zara near the bar. He had journalist written in every line of him, the recorder-shaped bulge in his pocket, the slight forward lean. He opened with something soft about the Monroe family, which told her immediately that the question he actually wanted was several moves away. She had him placed in 4 seconds. She knew exactly how to handle it. She opened her mouth. Ji-hoon appeared at her shoulder. "I don't believe we've been introduced," he said to the journalist, and his voice had the particular quality of a door being closed. Not loudly, just finally. The man made 2 more attempts, then excused himself. Ji-hoon turned back to the room. Zara looked at the side of his face. "I had it," she said. "I know." "Then why?" "Because I calculated wrong." He said it the way a person states a fact, no apology, scaffolded around it, no explanation reaching for sympathy. Just the acknowledgement, clean and direct. "It won't happen again." Zara studied him. 4 years of pre-med had taught her to observe. The way the body said things, the voice didn't. His jaw was set but not defensive. His eyes were already moving back to the room, cataloging, but the stillness in his posture was genuine. He was not managing her. He was telling her the truth about a mistake. She nodded once, turned back to her drink. That was the moment she decided to trust him. Not because he had been perfect, because he hadn't been and he hadn't pretended otherwise. They were back at Kwan Tower by 11:15 p.m. Ji-hoon loosened his tie, sat on the couch and looked at Zara across the low table. She waited. He had said soon, 4 days ago. She suspected soon had arrived. It had. He told her everything. The wheelchair was deliberate. Constructed after the accident healed faster than the doctors predicted. Maintained as cover while he built what he needed. Victoria and his stepbrother Ethan had spent 3 years positioning for control of Kwan Capital. They needed Ji-hoon gone, disabled, discredited, or displaced. The accident on I-90 was not an accident. He had known that within 72 hours of waking up in Northwestern's ICU. He had spent the months since building a case file they could not argue against. He had known Celeste would refuse. He had known the Monroes would offer Zara. He had let it happen. Was any of it real, Zara asked. Ji-hoon looked at her without hesitation. This conversation, he said. Right now. This is the most real thing I've had in 3 years. The city hummed 47 floors below them. Zara held his gaze and said nothing. Because some things, if you answered them too quickly, you answered wrong. The folder was 4 inches thick. Ji-hoon set it on the kitchen counter the next morning without preamble, the way a person sets down something heavy they have been carrying alone for a long time. Zara opened it. Financial records first. Transfers from Kwan Capital operate accounts to a shell company registered in Delaware. $14.3 million across 19 months. Moved in increments small enough to avoid automatic flags but large enough to matter. Then the emails. Victoria and Ethan, a private server. Timestamps running back 31 months. Language careful but not careful enough. The specific carefulness of people who believed they were untouchable. Then the last document. A single page. A bank transfer. $87,000 to a name she didn't recognize. Cross-referenced with a second file. Phone records, 2 numbers, 14 calls in the 6 days before the accident on I-90. The name belonged to a man who drove a commercial truck for a logistics company out of Gary, Indiana. He had resigned 4 days after the crash and could not be located. Zara set the page down. She paid someone to kill you. Yes, the word landed in the kitchen without drama. Ji-hoon drank his coffee. Outside, Chicago was beginning its morning. The particular gray light of October pressing flat against the windows, boats moving slow on the lake. I'm presenting this to the board Monday, he said. Federal prosecutors have been briefed. There will be arrests. He paused. Before that happens, there is something I need to ask you. Zara looked at him. You can leave today. The apartment, the $60,000. It's arranged. The paperwork is ready. You walk out and none of this touches you. He held her gaze. Or you stay, and this gets complicated. Zara said nothing yet. I need a partner in the room Monday, he continued. Not a wife on paper. Someone who has been watching Victoria and Claire operate for 3 weeks and can speak to what she saw. Someone they underestimated. A pause. Someone they never looked at closely enough. Zara closed the folder. She did not answer him. Not yet. His phone rang at 9:47 p.m. He looked at the screen and something in his face went flat. Not the controlled flatness he maintained in public, but a different kind. The kind produced by a name you cannot ignore and would prefer to. "I need you to come with me," he said. "I can't leave you here alone right now." "Why not?" "Because the man calling knows you exist, which means staying here is less safe than coming." He was already reaching for his jacket. "I'll explain in the car." Navy Pier sat dark and largely empty at 10:41 p.m., the tourist season long finished, the lake wind moving cold and purposeful off the water. The car stopped outside a warehouse at the pier's western edge. Industrial, unmarked, a light burning yellow through a single high window. Inside, concrete floor, wooden table, 2 chairs. And in one of those chairs, a man in his late 60s with the unhurried composure of someone who had never once been kept waiting. Mr. Cho. He was not large. He was not loud. He wore a dark suit with the collar open and drank tea from a ceramic cup with both hands, like a man at his own kitchen table. His eyes moved to Zara when she entered and stayed there for a moment. Not with menace, but with the careful attention of a person assessing the weight of something before deciding how to handle it. Then he looked at Ji-hoon and spoke in Korean. Zara did not speak Korean, but she had spent her life reading rooms, and this one told her enough. The tone, measured, almost paternal. The way Ji-hoon received it, still neither deferential nor resistant, the posture of a man standing his ground on ground he did not own. Mr. Cho wanted something. He wanted information from the board meeting. Internal projections, acquisition targets. The kind of data that moved quietly between the legal world and the one that operated beside it. In exchange, a guarantee that the moves Victoria had made in certain other circles would not find their way back to Ji-hoon during the vulnerability of Monday's confrontation. Ji-hoon said no. He said it in English. One word, delivered without raising his voice, without shifting his weight, without any of the signals that typically accompanied a refusal made to someone with Mr. Cho's particular gravity. The old man was quiet for a moment. Then he set his cup down with a soft sound that seemed, in the silence of that warehouse, very loud. "Then you owe me a different price," Mr. Cho said. Later, he stood, buttoned his jacket, and walked out without looking at either of them again. On the drive back, the car moved through the city and neither of them spoke for a long time. Zara watched the streetlights pass, orange and white, regular as a pulse. Then she said, "Is this what your life looks like?" Ji-hoon kept his eyes on the road. The silence ran 11 seconds. She counted them. "Yes," he said. Zara nodded slowly. "Then I need to know all of it, not selected parts. All of it." He glanced at her. Then back to the road. 5:53 a.m. Zara sat at the kitchen counter in the dark. She had not slept. She had not tried. She had made coffee at some point, and it had gone cold without her drinking it. And she sat with both hands around the cold cup and looked at the city beginning to gray at its edges through the east-facing windows. She thought about the Monroe basement. 214 square feet and a window she could never see faces through. She thought about medical school. 3rd year, the semester she left. She had been good. She knew she had been good. She had left because there was no one behind her, no floor under her, and when she looked forward, the distance was too large to cross on will alone. She thought about the $60,000 in the apartment and what that actually looked like as a life. A start, she had told herself. Enough to begin. She thought about Mr. Cho's eyes when he looked at her in that warehouse. Not as an obstacle, not as a convenience, but as a variable. A person of consequence in an equation he was still calculating. He had looked at her the way no one in the Monroe house ever had. She thought about Ji-hoon on the drive home saying yes to her question about his life, not managing it, not softening it, not offering her an easier version to make the answer more acceptable. Just yes. She thought about what it would mean to walk out today. The apartment, the $60,000, the careful, modest, salvaged beginning, and she thought about what it would mean to stay. Not for Ji-hoon. That was not the calculation. For herself. She had spent 26 years being assigned to things, to the Monroe house, to the basement room, to the role of person who asked nothing and expected less. This was the first time in her life that a choice of genuine weight had been placed in front of her and left there, without pressure, without a clock running. She could walk out. Marcus Monroe would never touch her again. She would be free in the small, quiet way that was the best outcome she had ever allowed herself to imagine. Or she could stay and fight inside a world that was dangerous and complicated and entirely outside anything she had prepared for. And perhaps, for the first time, find out what she was actually capable of when someone stood beside her instead of against her. Zara stood up. She poured the cold coffee down the drain, made a fresh cup, and when Ji-hoon appeared in the kitchen doorway at 6:11 a.m., she looked at him and said, "Tell me everything I need to know about that boardroom." Quan Capital, 875 North Michigan Avenue, Tung 38, 8 Clay a.m. sharp. Ji-hoon walked through the boardroom door on his own 2 feet. The wheelchair sat empty in the hallway outside. Someone would find it later and understand, or they wouldn't, but either way it had done its work and it was finished now. 11 board members. The room went quiet in the specific way. Rooms go quiet when the thing they were prepared for is replaced by something they were not. Ethan Kwan's pen hit the table. Victoria sat at the far end, composed, and then, as Jihoon crossed the full length of the room without pause, without assistance, without any concession to the narrative she had built her last 3 years upon, her composure developed a crack so small only someone watching for it would see it. Zara saw it. Jihoon reached the head of the table, set the folder down, looked at the room once, the way a man looks at something he has been patient about for a very long time. Then he began. What no one in that room was prepared for, not Victoria, not Ethan, not the 4 board members Vanessa believed she had in her corner, was how complete it was. Not allegations, not suggestions. $14.3 million with transaction records. Emails with timestamps, phone records with cross-references, and a single-page summary from the FBI field office that had been active on the case for 6 weeks. Victoria spoke at the 12-minute mark. Her voice was level, and her argument was the one Zara had expected. Jihoon was unstable, had concealed a recovery to manipulate the board, had introduced a woman of unknown background and questionable motive into the Kwan family structure. She turned to face Zara directly. Ask her what she gets out of this, Victoria said to the room. Ask her what a Monroe family charity case expects to walk away with. The room waited. Zara set down her water glass and stood up. The room had the quality of held breath. 11 board members. Victoria at the far end, chin raised, the expression of a woman who had won this particular type of confrontation before and expected to win it again. Ethan staring at the table. Samuel Kwan standing near the door. Zara had not heard him enter, but he was there and he was watching his son. Zara stood and did not rush. She had learned a long time ago that the person who speaks first from discomfort loses the room before they open their mouth, so she waited 3 seconds, long enough to be felt, not long enough to seem uncertain, and then she spoke. I want to address what Mrs. Kwan actually just said, Zara began. Not the question she framed for the room, the one underneath it. She looked at Victoria directly. The question is whether I'm here for Jihoon's money, whether I married into this family as a strategy rather than a person. A pause. I did marry into this family as a strategy. The Monroes sent me here to protect a $340 million merger agreement when Celeste refused to honor her commitment. I agreed because I needed $60,000 in an apartment to stop living in someone's basement. Silence. I'm telling you this, Zara continued, because it's already in the room. Victoria put it there. And the only thing more dangerous than a truth your opponent knows is a truth they think you're hiding. She turned to address the full table. What I am not here for is Jihoon's money. I have not touched the account access Nara offered me 3 weeks ago. I have not made a single request for funds, property, or assets beyond the original agreement with the Monroe family, which is documented, notarized, and available if anyone wants to review it. She set a single sheet on the table, slid it toward the center. What I am here for is what Jihoon asked me to be here for. Someone who spent the last 3 weeks watching the people in this room operate, in social settings, in private conversations, in the ways people behave when they believe they're not being observed. She looked at Victoria. You are very good at what you do, Mrs. Kwan. The erasure at the Aldermore Gala was genuinely elegant. I've never seen it done so cleanly in a social setting. But you made one consistent mistake. Zara tilted her head slightly. You looked at me and saw someone who wasn't worth watching, which meant you stopped watching yourself around me. Victoria's jaw tightened. I have 14 specific observations from the last 3 weeks that corroborate the documentary evidence Jihoon has already presented. Conversations, behavioral patterns, one phone call you made in the Aldermore's North Corridor at 9:23 p.m. that you will recall was not as private as you believed. Zara opened the notepad in front of her. I'm happy to go through all 14, or we can save time. The room was very still. Claire Ashwood had been quiet through all of it. Seated mid-table, posture composed, the expression of a woman calculating exits. She had arrived as a board observer, a title that gave her presence without requiring her commitment. Now she leaned forward. This is compelling theater, Claire said. But Jihoon concealed a physical recovery from this board for months. Whatever Victoria did or didn't do, that concealment alone raises questions about his fitness to lead. Who else in this room knew? Her eyes moved to Zara. How long have you known? It was a clean pivot. Zara acknowledged it internally. 4 days, Zara said, which is 3 days less than your compliance team knew about the data transfer. Claire went still. Kwan Capital's internal audit flagged an anomaly 6 weeks ago, Zara said. Specifically, a query run against Jihoon's acquisition pipeline from a device registered to Ashwood Capital's secondary server. The query happened at 11:14 p.m. on a Tuesday. It accessed projected targets for Q2 and Q3. She paused. You were at the Aldermore that night. I watched you leave the main room at 11:08 p.m. You came back at 11:21. Claire did not move. You were removed from the Meridian deal 8 months ago, Zara continued. You knew what Jihoon was building and you decided if you couldn't be in it, you'd sell it. The documentation on that server query is in the secondary folder, the one Jihoon hasn't opened yet because he was giving you the option to leave quietly. Why? She looked at Claire without heat, without satisfaction, with the clean steadiness of someone delivering a factual account. That option expired about 90 seconds ago. Claire picked up her portfolio, stood, walked to the door. She did not look back. What happened next took 4 minutes. Victoria, understanding that the room had shifted beyond recovery, attempted one final move, standing, voice raised, directing herself to Samuel Kwan at the door. Every word she said was technically accurate and entirely beside the point, and the board members watching her understood this, which made it worse. Samuel listened without expression until she finished. Then he said quietly, "I gave you everything except the one thing you wanted. I'm sorry for that, but it doesn't change what you did." Victoria opened her mouth. Security arrived. They had been waiting. Zara understood that now the two men in dark suits who appeared in the doorway with the timing of people who had been told exactly when to come. They were professional and not unkind. Victoria left making noise that echoed through the corridor and disappeared into the elevator. The boardroom was silent. Ethan Kwan had not spoken once. He sat with his head in his hands, and after a moment he looked up at Ji-hoon across the length of the table. Something passed between them. Not forgiveness, not yet, but the first faint acknowledgement that the war was over and both of them were still in the room. "She had files," Ethan said quietly. "I can tell you where." The call came at 7:19 p.m. Zara was in the penthouse kitchen when Ji-hoon appeared in the doorway, his phone in his hand, his expression carrying the particular weight of news that changes the shape of a room. "My investigator," he said. "About your family." Zara set down the glass she was holding. She had given him permission 3 weeks ago, in the early days at the penthouse. Find out who her parents were, find out what the Monroes had hidden. She had asked for it and then tried not to think about it, the way you try not to watch a door you've been waiting your whole life for someone to open. "Tell me," she said. Ji-hoon crossed the room and sat across from her. "Your name isn't Zara Monroe," he said. "It's Zara Webb." The name landed quietly. She had not expected it to have a sound of its own, but it did. Your father was Elijah Webb, civil rights attorney. He was building a federal case against a network of municipal contractors engaged in systematic housing fraud. A case that would have implicated several people with significant financial and political exposure. Ji-hoon held her gaze. In March 2006, he was shot during what was classified as an armed robbery outside his office on South Michigan Avenue. The case died with him. Zara did not move. Marcus Monroe was one of the contractors named in Elijah's files. He owed your father $2.3 million in documented fraud proceeds, and he owed him something considerably larger in legal exposure. When Elijah died, Marcus took custody of you through the foster system, a man who had never met you before, presenting himself as a family friend. Ji-hoon's voice was steady and careful, the way you carry something fragile over uneven ground. He didn't take you in out of guilt. He took you in to make sure you stayed inside the story he was telling. Zara looked at the table. She thought about the basement room, about girl called down the staircase, about 18 years of being kept just comfortable enough not to leave and just diminished enough not to ask questions. She was not a charity case. She was a sealed document. "There's one more thing," Ji-hoon said. She looked up. "You have a brother, Isaiah Webb. 35. He's been running Webb Legal Group since your father died, built it from nothing, kept your father's work alive." He paused. "He has been looking for you for 18 years and 4 months. He never stopped." Isaiah Webb was already in the building. Ji-hoon had called him before Zara woke that morning, which she understood later was another form of the same thing Ji-hoon did in the boardroom. Prepare everything. Leave nothing to chance. Give the moment the space it needed to be what it was. Isaiah stood near the window when she walked in, tall, dark suit. Their father's eyes, she knew this without having a photograph to compare, the way you know certain things from the inside rather than from evidence. His face was composed, but his hands were not. He held them at his sides, and they were absolutely still in the way hands are still only when you are telling them very firmly to be. Zara stopped 3 feet from him. He reached into his jacket pocket and placed something in her open palm, a gold bracelet. Delicate, small, worn smooth in the way objects are worn when they have been held often. She looked at it. A single charm, the letter Z, and beside it the letter I. The two worked together in a thin filigree she would have needed a magnifying glass to fully read. She understood without being told. Frozen moment. Her thumb moved across the surface of the charm. The room was very quiet. The city was 47 floors below. 7 seconds passed without either of them speaking, and in those 7 seconds, something that had been missing for 18 years and 4 months settled back into its place with a weight so specific and so long awaited that there was no word for it that didn't fall short. Isaiah said, "I didn't know where they put you. I looked everywhere." Zara closed her hand around the bracelet. "I know," she said. "I know you did." The arrests happened on a Saturday. Victoria Kwan had organized a luncheon at the Aldermore Grand. 40 guests, white tablecloths, the specific performance of a woman who intended to demonstrate that nothing had changed. The FBI arrived at 12:34 p.m. while the first course was being served. 2 agents, unhurried, professional. Victoria stood when they entered the room. She looked at them and then, briefly, at the door. The instinct of a person who has always had an exit and is only now understanding that this one has been closed. She left in handcuffs through the hotel's service entrance. 40 guests sat with untouched food in front of them and said nothing. The legal proceedings moved with the particular momentum of cases built over months by people who had been patient. Victoria Kwan, conspiracy to commit murder, corporate fraud, embezzlement of $14.3 million. Federal prosecutors did not offer a plea. The trial lasted 11 days. The jury deliberated for 6 hours and returned a verdict on a Wednesday afternoon. Sentencing, 12 to 15 years. Assets frozen, $22.7 million. The house in Lake Forest went into receivership. The Aldermore membership was quietly revoked. Ethan Kwan cooperated fully. His testimony was, by the prosecutor's account, the most detailed and damaging of any witness in the trial. He received no prison time. He resigned from every position at Kwan Capital and accepted a role at a nonprofit in Seattle that Ji-hoon had arranged without being asked to and never mentioned. Samuel Kwan flew to Seattle 2 months later and came back without discussing what had been said. That was enough. Claire Ashwood was not charged criminally. The server query existed in a jurisdiction of corporate law that moved slower and quieter than federal court, but Kwan Capital terminated 4 active agreements with Ashwood Capital within 30 days. The financial press noticed the pattern without understanding its full cause. 3 other firms followed Kwan's lead within 6 weeks, reading the signal correctly if not completely. Ashwood Capital's valuation fell 31% in 90 days. Claire gave one interview in which she described the situation as a misunderstanding rooted in personal conflict. The interviewer did not push back. The market had already decided. Marcus Monroe retained a lawyer 3 days after Zara's deposition was filed. 14 pages, no embellishment, every date and detail recorded with the precision of someone who had been storing them for a long time without knowing why. The civil case moved through mediation. Marcus settled for $3.1 million. He and Diane sold the Lincoln Park estate 6 months later and moved to Scottsdale in the specific quiet of people who understand they have no remaining standing in the place they left. Celeste sent Zara a text message 4 months after the trial. 8 words. I knew it was wrong. I'm sorry. Zara read it twice, did not respond, filed it in a folder she created on her phone titled Evidence of Human Complexity and left it there. The Monroes were gone. Victoria was sentenced. Claire was diminished. What remained, in the space where 18 years of wait had been, was not triumph. It was quiet. Zara had expected triumph. She had spent enough nights imagining the moment that she had a detailed picture of what it was supposed to feel like. The specific satisfaction of a score that had been settled, a debt finally paid in the correct direction. What she found instead was quieter and stranger and, she eventually decided, considerably better. She enrolled in a post-baccalaureate medical program at Northwestern in January, not because Ji-hoon suggested it, not because Isaiah funded it, though he offered. Because she had been good, she had always known she had been good, and being good at something and abandoning it because no one was standing behind you was a form of theft she was no longer willing to accept. She was the oldest student in her cohort by 4 years. She introduced herself on the first day as Zara Webb. 6 months after the trial, Isaiah Webb and Zara stood at a podium in a building on South Michigan Avenue, 2 blocks from where their father had been shot 19 years ago. The Webb Foundation occupied the building's 2nd and 3rd floors. Legal support for children in the foster care system, educational funding, an intake process designed specifically to find the children who had been placed not out of kindness but out of calculation, and to get them out. The rooms held 60 people, former foster children, 3 judges, 2 aldermen, a reporter from the Tribune who had covered Elijah Webb's original case and had spent 19 years waiting for this building to exist. Zara did not prepare a speech. She looked at the room and said, I was invisible for 18 years, not because no one could see me, because I was in a room full of people who had decided, before I walked in, that I wasn't worth looking at. She paused. If you are in that room right now, I need you to know that invisible is not the same as unimportant. It just means the wrong people are doing the looking. Isaiah put his hand briefly on her shoulder. She did not look at Ji-hoon, who was standing near the back of the room. She didn't need to. She knew he was there. That night, the penthouse, 11:23 p.m. They stood on the balcony. The same balcony, the same city, Lake Michigan, running dark and wide in the east the way it always did, indifferent and enormous, and somehow for that exact reason, steadying. Ji-hoon did not speak. Zara looked at the city for a long time. She thought about the elevator 6 months ago, the glass box, the sealed envelope, the woman in the reflection she didn't recognize. She thought about the basement room, the cold table, the shoes passing at street level that never had faces. She thought about 5:53 a.m. in the dark kitchen, when she had stood up and poured cold coffee down the drain and chosen, for the first time, the harder and truer thing. She was Zara Webb. She was the daughter of a man who had spent his life making the law mean something for people it had never been designed to protect. She was the sister of a man who had looked for her for 18 years and 4 months without stopping. She was a medical student, 4 years older than her classmates, who would be a doctor in 4 years and 2 months if she kept the pace she was keeping. And she was standing here. Ji-hoon placed his hand over hers on the railing. He did not say anything. He did not move closer, did not turn toward her, did not make the gesture into something larger than it was. He simply placed his hand over hers and left it there, warm and deliberate and entirely without performance. She looked down at it. Then she looked at him. "Don't make me regret this," she said. Ji-hoon turned to meet her eyes. He did not smile. He did not offer reassurance in the form of words, which would have been easier and meant less. He held her gaze for 3 seconds, the same 3 seconds she had used in the boardroom, the same wait, and then nodded once. Slow. Certain. The city moved below them, indifferent and luminous, 31,000 lights that didn't know and didn't need to know what had just been said on the 47th floor. It was the most honest promise Zara had ever been given. Not because it was elaborate, because it wasn't. And that is where we leave Zara Webb. Not at a wedding. Not at a gala. Not at the moment of victory, with the villains defeated and the crowd applauding and the music swelling. We leave her on a balcony at 11:23 p.m., with her hand under someone else's, having chosen for herself, by herself, to stay. Because that's the thing this story kept trying to say underneath all of it. Zara didn't win because she found a powerful man. She didn't win because she was rescued, or revealed, or recognized by the right people at the right moment. She won because at 5:53 in the morning, alone in a dark kitchen, she decided she was worth the harder thing. That decision happened before anyone was watching. That's the only place decisions like that can happen. I want to know which moment stayed with you. Was it Zara in that boardroom, standing up for the 3rd time when she had every reason not to? Was it Ji-hoon at Navy Pier, saying no to a man nobody says no to? Was it Isaiah standing at the window with a bracelet worn smooth from being held too often? Drop it in the comments. Tell me where you're watching from and what time it is there. I genuinely want to know who stayed until the end of this one. If this story meant something to you, share it with someone who needs to hear it today, not tomorrow. Today. Hit like if you believe the quiet ones are the most dangerous when they finally decide to speak. And subscribe because there are more stories coming. And every single one of them is about someone who was underestimated. You know what that feels like. So do I.
That's the end of today's story here on Channel Mafia Stories. Thank you for watching all the way to the end. It genuinely means a lot. Now I have to ask, are you team him or team her? Drop it in the comments. I want to see which side wins. If this story kept you hooked, hit that like button. It helps more than you know. Subscribe and hit the bell so you never miss the next one. See you soon.